fellow.
It is. It's a language in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say when I was in back when I was in uni that Simpsons was a language of its own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And film quotes, they're another one.
They
I'm
work.
multilingual. I'm a polyglot of invented languages. Is what I am over here.
I would love to actually kind of try to do that, maybe for like charity or something, where someone watches me for a whole 24 hours where I'm not able to say anything unless it's a quote from a movie. To see if you can actually make it through the day just by quoting movies and it still be momentarily significant to the conversation at hand.
Well, I mean, I think I told you probably a year and a half ago about before the world went to shit about the art installation they had here in Melbourne at Acme called The Clock. I don't know if I mentioned it. Maybe I didn't mention it. But it's basically a 24-hour movie that's basically made up of clips of other movies, but all involving clocks.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, you did talk about that. I remember.
And the time in real life was the time in the movie. So if it was 5:30 in Melbourne, the clocks in the movie were 5:30, 5:31, 5:32.
Yeah.
And then, and you sit there for half an hour. I got to go somewhere and do something, but I want to see what happens at 6 o'clock. Like it was freaking awesome. I really wish I could have stayed for longer. Because it was a lot of fun. But anyway, it's that sort of thing, right? You could see if you could make a movie out of other movies that made sense. Like it'd be like a DJ making a record out of samples.
Yeah, a bizarre supercuts of a 24-hour life.
Maybe we could suggest that to the Gothenburg Film Festival. You commented, we had a bit of a chat about this last week. There was a story going around that it was a Swedish film festival. I think it was the Gothenburg Film Festival.
I think it was, yeah.
Was looking for someone to basically live in a lighthouse for a week. And the idea being that you would live in the lighthouse and you would watch you have no contact with anybody else, no books, no phones, laptops, tablets, none of that. And you basically just had to stay in this lighthouse and watch the movies that the festival was showing. We talked about I would have really put my name forward, but I've got no idea how the hell I'm going to get to Sweden right now. So
yeah, especially going to Sweden, it's going to be really expensive for one thing, anyway, and especially during COVID.
I mean, I can't even get to Sydney right now. I can't get to Perth. You can't go to the other side of the country. Let alone. But anyway, what an interesting idea that would be to live in the lighthouse for a couple of weeks watching movies. That would have been fascinating.
Yeah, I reckon there's probably been someone who's like, "Oh, can I make a movie out of that?" Already.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be a horror movie, sure. But then again, we did have The Lighthouse that came out late 2019, I think. Actually, with Robert Pattinson and
Willem Dafoe,
which was fucking awful. It was awful.
That was by the same person that did The Witch, right?
Which was also awful.
Both of those have had. I've heard such amazing things by some people that I know and some reviewers. They seem to really, really love it.
Yeah, I guess it's like if you like artsy fartsy crap that doesn't mean anything, and you can read things into anything it's going, as long as it's got like an arty film angle and they shoot it in black and white, then good. Then well, we used Pattinson as a Christ figure, and I don't know, like it was parts of it were cool because they had a great aesthetic, but like it's like parts of it were like, wow, this could be fucking scary as fuck, but like then it would be Robert Pattinson having sex with an imaginary mermaid. You're like, oh, okay, it's different.
Fair enough.
I'm very, very bored. Please end.
I wonder if he's just trying to play like sexual bingo or something. It's like, yeah, I've had relations with vampire and a mermaid. I've got to get the Wolfman in there.
Get that zombie sex movie, and that's going to happen. The zombie rom-com has died a little bit in the last 15 years.
It has, yeah.
Now, you've got a new thing up on the screen that I see.
Yes. Yeah, so because we had someone actually ask about it 2 weeks ago, finally got around to actually setting up on twitch.tv/thefriedbrain. If you go into About section, you can click on the donate button and donate via PayPal if you feel like you want to throw us money. Obviously, you don't have to. We're not paywalling any of our content because is it really worth any money?
The audience over the last 7 years has said no.
Yeah. But, someone asked, so why not? It's there if you want to. Anything that does get donated, it'll just go straight back into the hosting services and things like that. And additionally, we may have gear coming soon. Potential t-shirts may be available if you are interested. Again, just like the rest of our show and everything else, it's very basic and entirely generic.
Homemade, I think, is the PC term we use.
Yeah, it's crafty.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. I think we were talking about doing the Smell of an Oily Rag shirts probably.
Yeah.
Again, probably 6 or 7 years ago now. It would be, I think we got to be saying this show has probably been going on for 8 years, I think, now, as of 2021, because probably. I went to, be about that, because I reckon I went to Japan in 2015 and 2014. So we definitely recorded a show while I was in Japan.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah. It was a long time ago, at least 6 years ago, at least. Yeah. So
that was back when what was it called? The G&T podcast, yeah.
I endorsed the G&T podcast, and so just going to show, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else in between, and all the bots who are listening out there, when we put our mind to something, we say we're going to do it.
Yep,
bloody well do it. It may have taken 6 years.
Yeah. But if you'll see us wearing the t-shirts eventually. If you want one, just let us know and we'll get it through to you. And if that becomes as successful as the rest of the show, we could have more t-shirts coming. Who doesn't want one that says "Smell of an Oily Rag"?
We might sell one to somebody who we don't know for a change. I mean, I think we've had one question from somebody we don't know on the podcast, and that was kind of an event.
Yeah, that was quite a special moment. But I came up with an idea for another t-shirt. But this is I feel like a lot of people can probably appreciate this t-shirt. It's a doodle on t-shirt that says has a blank spot where you can do a tally and then number of days since last incident, and it can just be associated to anything. Like the amount.
I'm particularly pleased that the t-shirt you have designed references a very old meme that I particularly like that no one else is going to get.
As always, we are 100% on the bleeding
edge. You'd be like,
trends.
Use that troll facing. It was popular about 7 or 8 years ago. Yeah. Cool story, bro. No one's ever seen that on a shirt before.
Well, we're just, fashion is cyclical, and we're just at a point where it's completely, utterly the most possible out of date that it could be. But then in like 4 years' time, 5 years' time, people go, oh, wow, they were ahead of the time.
It's going to be lit, fan.
Something no one will ever say about our podcast.
Potentially, but bots might have already said it. I mean, they're changing. The new leader for the bots coming in overnight. Russian bots will be looking for a new target, and we are not averse.
We will sell out to anyone.
Anyway, we are open for business.
Now, we've talked enough crap at the start of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said before, this is episode 97 of Armchair Producers, and this week, our chain movie, following on from last week's Carlito's Way, which had an extended cameo, shall we say, by the one Viggo Mortensen, followed him over to the David Cronenberg 2007 movie, Eastern Promises, which co-starred Naomi Watts and Vincent Cassel to be kind of the three big names in the movie. Let's get right into talking about this movie. So first and foremost, the plot, for anyone who might not know.
You can't do that at the start.
Yeah, I can. I'm shaking things up.
People are expecting us to start waffling on about the film for about 5 minutes before remembering that we've forgotten to tell them what the plot is. I mean, man's crazy.
We are evolving the show. We
We see change.
You know what? There is actually from Focus Features. The mysterious and charismatic Russian-born Nikolai Luzhin is a driver for one of London's most notorious organized crime families of Eastern European origin. The family itself is part of the Vorovizakon criminal brotherhood, headed by Semyon, whose courtly charm as the welcoming proprietor of the plush Trans-Siberian restaurant impeccably masks a cold and brutal core. The family's fortunes are tested by Semyon's volatile son and enforcer, Kirill, who is more tightly bound to Nikolai than to his own father. But Nikolai's careful, maintained existence is jarred once he crosses paths at Christmas time with Anna Kritova, a midwife at a North London hospital. Anna is deeply affected by the desperate situation of a young teenager who dies while giving birth to a baby. Anna resolves to try and trace the baby's lineage and relatives. The girl's personal diary also survives her. It is written in Russian, and Anna seeks answers in it. Anna's mother, Helen, does not discourage her, but Anna's irascible Russian-born uncle Stefan urges caution. He is right to do so. By delving into the diary, Anna has accidentally unleashed the full fury of the Vori, with Semyon and Kirill closing ranks and Anna pressing her inquiries. Nikolai unexpectedly finds his loyalties divided. The family tightens its grip on him. Who can or should he trust? Several lives, including his own, hang in the balance as a harrowing chain of murder, deceit, and retribution reverberate through the darkest corners of both the family and London itself. Whew. Well,
That's the big one.
Yeah, that's a big one and pretty accurate.
Well, it's fairly good. It's like a fucking essay. It's half a script.
Now, Travis, you said that you hadn't seen this before,
I had
right?
not seen this before.
Okay, so what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting one. I guess the first thing I thought of, it's interesting to compare it because we are talking here about two back-to-back gangster films. And we're talking very, very, very different kinds of gangster films here. You know, the shiny, polished, glamorous, almost looking Brian De Palma film from last week of Carlito's Way, as compared here to the dour, grey, never where the gritty, dread-filled. You know, maybe that's because it was shot in London. It's the grey.
There's not really any sense of hope anywhere.
It's really dour. Dour is a word I want to focus on here. It's down. It's dark. It's dirty. It's not glamorous at all. It's a bit like if you compare, you know, look at a film like Trainspotting, which some people might have said glamorized the look of drug use, even as kind of horrible, compared to something like Requiem for a Dream, which just makes it look like fucking awful.
Yeah.
Whereas, like I said, Carlito's Way had that polished Hollywood edge to everything, and you know, did we? You know, I don't know if there was ever any dread in there or fear. You might have been attached to Carlito's character, but the film told us at the start what happened. Yeah. So you know that didn't help. Not that the Carlito's Way was a bad film, but this is a very, very different kind of film. Part of it, I think, is its origin. It's shot entirely in the UK. It's the first film David Cronenberg has ever shot entirely in the UK. David Cronenberg being a very well-known Canadian film director, where he shoots most of his stuff. But I think maybe also some of the subject matter here is far darker than something more realistic than Carlito's Way. I don't imagine life as a gangster is particularly flashy or glamorous for the most part. I mean, it's a pretty dark existence.
Well, it's where they kind of film all that. I lived in and around that area of London when I was there, and I've been into, when I lived in Limehouse, there are pubs and clubs that are known as you know, underground hangouts. And one of the things that you do notice is there is that kind of sense of bravado for them, like the way Vincent Cassel's character is. He's very loud and braggadocious and kind of in everyone's face, but there's always this almost like a glass ceiling kind of thing where they're loud within their certain allocated spot. And then beyond that, it's sort of like, no, from this line on, we're business, and we don't bring attention to ourselves. We don't do anything like this. It's almost like there is that kind of little bit of a facade of this is our safe spot versus this is the rest of the world, where we don't really want to draw attention to ourselves unless we are purposefully sending a message. And
did you walk onto this film's set, or was it just the Leo DiCaprio's films? Or was it Matt Damon's films you ruin when you walk onto the set?
I just ruined one take.
You make an interesting point there in the sense that this film is about another world. It's
Mm,
almost a subterranean world underneath.
mm,
I want to use the glitz, the glory of the financial capital of Europe. It is London, right?
mm,
There's this seedy underworld that sits underneath. Many seedy underworlds, I would imagine, that sit underneath it.
mm. And the way that it's introduced in the movie is very, very purposeful as well. Everything that we're really shown is any of the criminal stuff is up until kind of turning point in the story. It's always behind very kind of ominously closed doors. And when we're following Naomi Watts' character, there's always that physical, visual, obvious barrier between the world that she is in, which is not a happy one, really. It's Christmas time and it's raining, it's shitty, it's horrible. Usually, when it's Christmas time, it's a picturesque kind of idea where you've got snow coming down, it's lovely. That's not this world. And then there is it's lots of blank, horrible, oppressive doors that she has to knock at repeatedly to be let into this other world.
And at one point, Viggo Mortensen actually says to her, "This is not your world."
Mm.
I'd like to give a shout out at this point in time to Viggo Mortensen's acting. He was
Mm-hmm.
nominated, I think, for an Academy Award for Best Actor in this film. I'm not mistaken. He's it's not unusual to see an English actor or an American actor try and do a Russian character. Like I think Jeremy Irons, who did the Russian character in Tenet, and I think he did one in a Jack Ryan film as well. You think this damn Jack, and you're like,
Kenneth Branagh, not Jeremy
Kenneth Branagh.
Irons.
Sorry, wrong one. And you're like, yeah, all right, you're a good actor.
Yeah,
but
it's very generic the way that Kenneth
like,
Branagh is.
or you're Sean Connery. It's like, comrade.
Yes,
Together we
there's a
shall
Scottish
kill
part of Russia.
capitalist pigs. But this one actually, I would 100. You close your eyes, you would 100% believe you would actually listening to a native Russian speaker. He nailed the accent, and more than that, I think he nailed the mannerisms. The trivia on IMDb says he based his character to some degree on Vladimir Putin, which isn't a bad one, and you can kind of see it. He's going to get that stoicism, that Russian stoicism, which they're very famous for. Yeah. And having been there is a legit thing until they're drunk. But like people are throwing insults at him, or asking him to do ridiculous things. You sort of like a bit of a twitch of a face at, yes, okay, right. Doesn't let everything sort of seems to bounce off him. Nothing seems to phase him, which exudes a tremendous inner confidence in his ability to handle whatever comes, which we find out later. He's not just, he starts out, we think he's telling to tell people he's just a driver, but he's, no spoilers, but he's much more than that. Yeah. And it's
kind of a double meaning when he says, I'm just a driver, because the first time when we meet him, he's kind of, got the interaction with Vincent Cassel, who is always great in everything that he does. He's very good at what he does, but, he just mentions that he's just a driver, and it's sort of like, yeah, but you're not really. You're very clearly in a gang. And then as the story progresses, as revelations come to light, it's him saying, I'm just a driver. It's like, oh, it's got many more layers to it than what we're initially kind of exposed to, and what we think, oh, I'm so smart because I know what you mean. Oh, no, I didn't know the full extent of what you meant. Okay.
So Viggo is an extraordinary actor at his best, and this is one of his best things. So call out to that. If I have a criticism of this film, I feel like it gets into third gear and it stays there. It's exceedingly well made. It's brilliantly acted. I mean, there's A-grade talent all the way through this thing. The director has done a great job. It looks great. Story, I think, is pretty well written. It's written by Stephen Knight, I think it was his name.
He made Locke.
Locke, which is, if you haven't seen Locke, that's one of the best films I've seen in the last 10 years. But I feel like he sort of gets going, and it doesn't really get out of that third gear into a fourth gear of something like the chase scene in Carlito's Way, where
Mm,
it really got exciting. And maybe that's by design. Maybe David Cronenberg didn't want to make a gangster, and I sort of maybe this goes against what I just said. Maybe he didn't want to make a gangster film that was exciting. He wanted one that was dour and violent and depressing, and he succeeded. But
mm,
for me, that felt like it got to a
mm,
good place. It got going, and I'm like, I'm interested in these characters. I'm interested in where the story is going. Oh, it's over.
mm. There's never really any kind of cathartic release that we get. I mean, even at by the end, it's sort of like, okay, not really much has changed in the status quo of any of the characters, and it's like, okay, they've gone through a lot. We've seen them go through a lot that messes them up physically, emotionally, mentally, all of that stuff, and yet they're still kind of the same characters. Life just goes on for these people. It's almost like this is just a window into a brief 3 weeks into these people's lives on a very basic level, and you just see elements throughout. There's no kind of the bad guy, so, in the broader sense, doesn't really have any comeuppance.
And we don't.
The
I mean, it's sort of hinted at that
Yeah.
the main bad guy here played what's his name by Armin Mueller-Stahl,
Mm.
who plays Semyon, will be arrested. That seems to be the hint, the indication. But that all happens off camera,
Yeah.
if it happens at all.
Mm.
So look, it doesn't kill the film for me. It just makes me go, oh, okay. I kind of feel like there was it could have gone to another place, another gear to really, maybe even for the last 10 minutes to really make it a really compelling, exciting ending.
Mm.
And it just sort of faded out, which is probably in line with the rest of the film. But the other criticism I have is the character of Naomi Watts. Now, I think I am a fan of Naomi.
Me too.
I think she's a significantly underrated actress. She
Mhm.
doesn't work much anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, she was really good at, she's done some great stuff in her time in Hollywood. And who could forget, for the Aussies watching, her turn in the Lamb ad when she turns Tom Cruise down for a date. That legit. She was in a TV commercial for Lamb, and she's got to start somewhere. But again, so with no criticism of Naomi because she was wonderful, but the character didn't really feel. Her motivation seemed sort of unrealistic to me. So Naomi Watts' character is a midwife. She works in a hospital. The Tatiana, the young Russian prostitute, is brought into her hospital and dies in the process of giving birth.
Mm.
And nobody knows who she is. Nobody knows the baby's name or what to do with her.
Mm.
And Naomi Watts, she discovers her diary. And because she has, I guess, some Russian heritage, is the hint that she has some ins to people who can translate it for her and potentially tell her who Tatiana was and help her find out who her family is. I don't buy, though, that she would go on this quest. She becomes obsessed almost with this quest to uncover, as the description said, Tatiana's lineage and find out who, find out who her grandparents were. And, word on the street was it was Emperor Palpatine. So that cut that scene out. Controversial. But no, we sort of go after her, and she all of a sudden there are Russian gangsters involved, and she's like, it's fine. I'm gonna fucking go head to head potentially with these Russian gangsters to find out, who this rando woman was who unfortunately passed away in my hospital. And it doesn't. Any real person. You're obviously interesting, you say, but you lived in a part of London where there were Russian gangsters. I imagine you weren't fucking around with these people if you saw them, right?
No, not at all.
Keep your fucking distance from them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the pubs and clubs that are run by them can be amazing nights, and they are really impressive venues. But at the same time, just because they can turn fucking foul. And, every week there'd be news reports just coming through of bar fights or guns being fired in locations. And it's always around these certain pubs and things like that. So I'm like, yeah, shit went down. Glad I didn't go out that night.
So
I agree with your point on this. And I think that sorry, no, you can't finish your thought.
No, it's just going to say, that legitimately follows up. Like, Naomi Watts knows she doesn't belong in this world. And that line from Viggo Mortensen, you are not, it's just not your world, is legitimately true. And she would know that. And I think any real person would legitimately go, okay, well, look, I did my best. I'm not fucking with Russian gangsters to find out who this woman is. I'll let, the kid go into foster care or whatever. I've done my best. Unless we've had some other kind of motivation, I needed something stronger to tell me why she was acting in a really counterintuitive way.
That's my thought, because there is a kind of a throwaway line from her uncle Stefan, who says about her losing a baby and her husband running away. I feel like if that had been the kind of the inciting scene of the movie, the very first thing that we see is her suffering that loss, and then this kind of being 2 or 3 weeks later and she's still emotionally reeling from losing a baby, and then suddenly being thrown in this situation where she has an opportunity to literally save a baby from a dead mother, the role reversal kind of thing. I feel that could have been a bit more of an emotional, okay, yep, she's not ready to go back to work, and that was the first thing that she picked up. Fuck, that would throw me out in a spin as well. I feel like that would have justified it a little bit more, maybe.
It's not a massive problem, but I kind of found myself a few times going, really? Like at one point, Viggo Mortensen and her meet in a cafe. They handed their suggestion is that they will trade the diary, which Viggo Mortensen's boss wants, for information on Tatiana's parents or her family. And Viggo Mortensen just takes it and fucks off and leaves without giving her any information. And she chases him out of the cafe and confronts him. No, you told me you were, and like, no. Yeah, we have organized crime here in Melbourne, right? Like we had the Gangland War in the early 2000s. And I wouldn't say, I used to know people who would probably recognize a lot of the very well-known gangsters on the street. They're kind of mini celebrities in this city to a degree. And if I saw Mick Gatto, and I think I'd probably recognize Mick Gatto. If you don't know who that is, Google it. Well-known gangster in Melbourne. He's not in jail. If I saw Mick Gatto on the street, right, like, or if I ran up, I had any kind of dealing with him, I would I would be keeping my absolute distance. I want nothing to do with that because fucking you don't want a piece of that. And so I don't believe for a second Naomi Watts' character would have been this committed to it without a better reason for me. Back onto the positive side of things, though, I would like to give a shout out for some of the fight scenes in this, particularly the fight scene in the Turkish bath.
Holy shit, it's hard hitting. It's great.
I think this is like, fuck John Wick, right? Like, okay, the first two were fun. The third one sucked. But this, John Wick feels more like a choreographed fight than a real fight. This felt like a real fight. And the fact that Viggo Mortensen did it in a nude, like, props to him.
Yeah, and him rolling over things and hitting the floor like he does. There's no padding there. That's gotta hurt. That's gonna fucking hurt. And he just sells it and he rolls with it. And the fact that it's 2-on-1 and he is unarmed, it projects him as vulnerable but still dangerous, like a cornered animal. It's just lashing out, and that's kind of how his movements are. He's not sort of like bam, 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 bam. It's these ugly haymakers and just rolling himself to get any form of leverage on his opponents. It's good.
I mean, it's apparently, according to the trivia here, it took 2 days to shoot. And it was shot on location. So you're right, probably right. I mean, nope, this is a location. That means it's a real Turkish bath or Russian bath for those who are playing at home. If the gangsters are listening, it's a fucking Russian bath. Okay. So you're not padding that, right? You're right. It's a real one. And then here, this interesting line, it says it was choreographed with the actors instead of stuntmen. I
Mm.
don't know if that means they choreographed it, they worked it all out between the two actors and then had stuntmen come in and shoot it, or it was shot by Viggo and the other two actors who were playing the assassins. I'm not sure. But it's one of the most brutal and brilliantly choreographed fight scenes I think I've seen in a film in a very, very long time. Have you ever seen a real fight? You used to go out to the pubs in London. There must have been the odd fight.
Yeah, I've seen a couple.
And that's what real fights kind of look like, right? They're not.
They
not John
are
Wick,
not pretty. They are not pretty, and don't care who you are. I do not care what kind of training you've had. You're in a fight. All of that shit goes out the window, and you will play dirty straight away. And these guys, every single one of them goes for the quick, I want to take them down in one hit action. They go for gut, they go for balls. You just sort of like, I want to get out of this situation. That's it. And they capture that kind of agency,
an immediacy, and sort of and the adrenaline's pumping. And you're right. I've never been in a fight, but as a great man once said, "Win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat." Especially if we're in a knife fight in a Russian bath. Famous words. But that was probably the biggest action set piece in the film.
Yeah.
But the other, we should probably note here, if you're just sitting here thinking, this sounds like the kind of movie I might like to watch. It's incredibly violent. It's like, it's the violent sort of spikes, sharp and out of nowhere, but it is brutal. Like, it is not pulling, this film doesn't pull any punches. It's very, very graphic violence. If that bothers you, this is not the film for you.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. This is rated 18. It's available on Stan for anyone in Australia who wants to watch it. I do recommend it because this is a great hour and 40 minutes of quality acting, interesting story. It's a different kind of story. This sort of thing, I feel, is a good companion piece in some ways to History of Violence, another Viggo Mortensen, David Cronenberg. Also, it definitely that the feel, the kind of the gritty real world feel of Locke. The writer, he's Stephen Knight, he's got his style, and this very much in line with that. So if you've watched Locke, you're probably going to be able to appreciate what's going on in this movie as well, because it's unlike certain directors who don't care about character, Stephen Knight likes to spend time developing his characters. Tom Hardy was fantastic in Locke, and I think he actually wrote or came up with the idea for Legend, which is Tom Hardy doing the Cray Brothers, which is
he doesn't have a credit for it.
No, okay, but it's along those lines.
Or if you've seen Pawn Sacrifice, it's a few years old now, but the Tobey Maguire chess movie.
That's right.
It's an acquired taste. But again, that's all about the characters involved. It's the character of Tobey Maguire's what's his name, Fisher. I can't think of actually the chess player's name, but and you're right. He takes time here. He's going to be spending time with conversations and learning about people's motivations, and I think that for me is one of the strengths of a film. That and the acting. So the call out. We talked about Viggo. We talked about Naomi Watts. Bit of a shit. You mentioned Vincent Cassel earlier. He plays a cocky, unreliable, psychopath.
Son of the boss, thinks he can kind of get away with everything.
In there as well, I mentioned Armin Mueller-Stahl, who'd be one of those guys you'd be like, oh, that dude.
I just saw, the character of Tatiana is played by Tatiana Maslany, who went on to be very, very successful in Orphan Black, and not really seen her in much recently, but she was for a good period of time. She was very, very popular, and everyone wanted her in everything.
She's going to be in She-Hulk. She's going to play She-Hulk.
Well, there we go. Young actress nabbed by Marvel. What a surprise.
She was also in Perry Mason that came out. We talked about that last year.
Yes.
I was mentioning Armin Mueller-Stahl, the German actor who plays Semyon, who I mentioned earlier. be a very familiar face. He was wonderfully menacing in this,
Mm,
in a quiet menace kind of way. Like he
yeah,
didn't say much, but you were fucking terrified.
yeah.
Um,
I think maybe he raised his voice twice in the whole thing, but every single time he's on screen, he is just that bubbling pot of you're being nice right now because you are choosing to be nice, but your instinct is to conquer, destroy, and subjugate anyone or anything that you are talking to.
and it's really well done in the sense that a little bit like, I mean, it's going to be a weird leap, okay? The idea of Breaking Bad was that it's Mr. Chips who turns into Scarface. If we
Okay,
have
I
the
get it.
first thing we meet Armin Mueller-Stahl, he has that really grandfatherly, way about him when he was talking to Naomi Watts. You're like, oh, he's like a charming, warm kind of guy, but then he turns around, he's a
Mm-hmm.
fucking nutbag you do not
Yeah,
want to mess with.
yeah. But great movie, and that was my choice of movie. So Travis, where are you taking us next week?
So many choices here, and I've been really torn. I mean, part of me wanted to go back and watch History of Violence, but another Viggo Mortensen movie would be probably a little bit cheating, considering same director as well. As good as that film is, and I kind of thought though I want to take us back in time a little bit and look at something that I thought was good at the time, and I wonder if it still looks good now.
Okay.
It's not Death Machine. It's not that bad.
No.
I've got two choices here, and I've decided on one now. I
Okay.
was originally going to go with Existence, the
Ah.
1999 Jude Law Cronenberg film, which again I thought was pretty good at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's been probably 20 years since I saw it. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a slightly different path, and now I am going to follow Armin Mueller-Stahl to the 1999 science fiction thriller mystery, The 13th Floor.
Oh shit. Yeah. Hang on. 1999, 13th floor. That's yeah. That's where I know him from. That's. I was trying to think of it and I couldn't remember.
He was
Oh.
also in Shine, if you've ever seen that. I did have a think about Shine, but I've seen that not so long ago. But interestingly, the 13th Floor is based on a book called Simulacron 3,
Mm.
written by Daniel Galouye. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. But this is a very influential book. It was turned into a film in the 70s called World on a Wire. If there was any way in hell we could get a copy of that, I would probably ask us to watch that at some point. But it's never been a particularly easy film to find. I saw it at a film festival.
Mm.
Plus it goes for 4 hours. That seems cruel. But this is a very, very influential book that influenced films like The Matrix as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is an interesting film because the critics hated it, but it has a bit of a cult following, and the audience seems to enjoy it. So I'm curious. I liked it when I saw it probably 20 years ago. So I'm curious to go back and watch it now and see if it's something that still holds up all these years later.
Yeah.
It is available to stream in Australia. You can rent it on the Googles, the Microsofts, YouTubes.
Yep.
If you are so inclined and you'd like to watch it as well. I liked it the last time, but we will find out next week if it holds up or whether I was just drunk or stoned or something at the time.
I think the last time I watched it might have been after it was released. I don't think I've seen it since then, and I remember thinking that was weird. I kind of like it. I'm curious, and I think I already know where I want to go next afterwards.
There's a fair few actors in this. We've got you said Armin Mueller-Stahl, Gretchen Mol, who was famous in the 90s, Dennis Haysbert, Vincent D'Onofrio, Craig Bierko is the star. Yeah, that says a lot. So anyway, that will be next week's Chain movie, and that's going to be a little bit left field. I wanted to take us away from the premium productions we've been having of late. It's just and see if we get down in the gutter again. Well, semi-gutter, if you listen to the critics anyway.
Yeah. All right. Now, should we move on to something we both watched?
Sure.
And it's we're actually on trend. WandaVision on Disney Plus. The first two episodes aired, and everyone is talking about it. It seems everyone seems to love the fact that this is doing something different. And
I see the opposite. I've been seeing a lot of comments from people saying it's boring. I don't like it. I hate it. It's stupid. I don't. It's so slow moving. Yada yada yada. So while I think you've summed up my thoughts on it initially, I thought it was good. But I've been seeing a lot of commentary online going about, oh, I'm a Marvel fan and I don't like it. Which actually I'm not surprised about.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. The reviews I've been seeing, everyone's loving it. The reviewers are loving it because it is a very different style of storytelling to what has been present in the first 10 years of the MCU, and especially very different to any of the MCU-based TV shows. And even going broader than that, any superhero TV shows. This is not your cookie cutter superhero villain of the week kind of thing. This is almost Lynchian.
It really is. And I should note, though, this is the first TV show from Marvel Studios proper.
The first
the other Marvel, with Luke Cage and Jessica Jones and Iron Fist and stuff were all done by...
There was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, which was a co-production.
The first pure production by Marvel Studios. And my first thought, we should probably give a bit of background, otherwise we'll be off topic. Blends the classic style of classic sitcoms with the MCU, which Wanda Maximoff and Vision, two superpowered beings living in their ideal suburban lives, begin to suspect not everything is as it seems. The first episode is purely in black and white and probably most closely resembles a Shibi show like I Love Lucy or Leave It to Beaver, in a very sort of wholesome, clean, Americana of the 1950s. The wife in the apron and the dress, and the husband in the suit and the briefcase going off to work, and or even maybe something a little bit more like Bewitched to a degree as well, given that Wanda is a witch of sorts, or a mutant witch. But what I love about this show is basically it's a 50-60 sitcom with MCU characters in it. And that is insanely risky an insanely risky take, right? We've never seen anything like it. And to do a Lynchian style superhero TV show, no one else, only someone with the success of Marvel, where they make all the money. When you just made Endgame, which made what, $2.5 billion or something like that? $2.5 billion? It was the highest grossing film of all time. I don't remember what Spider-Man Homecoming made, but I assume it was a fuck ton. At that point in time, basically Kevin Feige, I imagine, signs his own checks, really.
Yeah.
And someone comes with a cool idea, he goes, fuck it, let's do it.
And not only is it ballsy for them to do this style of thing, but Vision and Wanda are pretty much the most powerful beings in the MCU. They're literally both powered by Infinity Stones. And they brought about Endgame and Infinity War and all of that stuff. So putting them in a home in the suburbs where the challenge of the week is getting through the dinner with his boss is like, that's actually kind of genius. How would these people live on a day-to-day basis? Let's look at that. Let's see what else we can do. And then slowly, just little bits pepper throughout it. These little Easter eggs of the MCU. So like, the Strucker advert for the watch.
That was nice.
Strucker was one of the bad guy that basically created Wanda in the MCU at the very least.
Or the toaster in the first episode from Stark Industries.
Yeah, all of those little bits, and then you've got these little kind of audio cues, things that each of them are hearing, and it's. I think this is going to be very long form storytelling, which I am always a fan of. I like them spending time, and that brings me to my number one point that I love about this show. this is showcasing Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany really flexing their acting chops in ways that we have not seen whatsoever, because character development for both of them has been very, very limited in the movies, just because they haven't been the starting 5 or 6 characters from day dot. They've had very little time, and they've never really been given much to do with it anyway. And this is suddenly, Elizabeth Olsen is really awesome. She does a really good job in this. And Paul Bettany gets a chance to really flex more of his comedy muscles, and he's very good at it.
I think Bettany's always been a fine actor. I mean, I certainly, Elizabeth Olsen sort of came out of left field for me a little bit, in the sense I'd probably only ever seen her in one thing before she got the gig as Scarlet Witch. That was a film called Liberal Arts, which I thought she was quite good in. But otherwise, she was just the other Olsen sister.
Yeah.
And so, but Paul Bettany has a little bit more, I guess, of a memorable sort of background. I remember him from films like A Knight's Tale, Beautiful Mind, Master and Commander, through to things like Margin Call, which is one of my favorite movies. So he's been around a little while, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang he was in. So Wimbledon. So he's done
a lot, but he's not been able to do much with this because
because we've talked about it before. I think we talked about it when they initially announced the cast of the Avengers Endgame films, or what became Endgame and Infinity War. It's like, how do you put that many characters, that many huge stars on the screen and give them enough time?
Yeah.
You don't. Someone's going to miss out, and these two have, which is probably why they're going, well, they're probably, primed to be, in a 9-episode series, really, where we really spend a whole bunch of time just learning about their characters.
And you think, so go on.
No, to say, I really enjoy the dark elements to this show. Like it's got the luster, and they do it very well. It looks very good. Like it looks exactly like a show from the 1950s would look like.
Yeah.
But then they have these.
Apparently, they got Dick Van Dyke in to consult on it, so that the setting and the kind of production value of how these kinds of shows was legitimate. And up until it released, he had no idea how successful the MCU was.
That's cool. And I read they used a whole bunch of different lenses. Apparently, this show cost $25 million an episode.
Whew.
And the first episode was 25 minutes long?
Yeah, they're not long.
So it goes to show making something look really old like that is not cheap. So they look incredible. But in the first episode, where the boss comes to visit, the boss and his wife just kind of freak out and start yelling at them. Who are you? Why did you come here? And these sorts of things. And as you mentioned, some of the audio cues in episode 2, where she's listening to the radio and you can just hear someone going, Wanda, 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 who's doing this to you, Wanda? And you're like, oh, that's fucking cool.
And apparently that in itself is potentially another Easter egg, because the voice of it is the FBI agent who was kind of babysitting Paul Rudd's character in Ant-Man and the Wasp, the guy who kept on coming to just check and make sure he's okay. It's the same guy. So it's like, okay, is the FBI involved in this, or are they trying to free her from something, or what? It's just that really, really clever stuff of, if you don't know anything about the MCU somehow, and you decide to watch this show, you are going to find it fun and enjoyable. But there's all these darker little twist elements of further overarching story development that come through that just make you want to come back for the next episode, because like, oh, what does that mean?
I'm intrigued. I want to know what's going on. Some obvious references here. Pleasantville, for one. Halfway through episode 2, it changes to full color. And I think the idea is the episodes will progress through time. So it's sort of move from the 50s to the 60s now, or then move on to the 70s and 80s and so on from there. So Pleasantville is a real obvious touch point, and I think they reference it as quite obviously reference it as an influence. But the other influence I've got here is one that I don't know it was intentional, but I haven't heard anyone else mention it, but it really feels strongly to me. Is trying to remember the game. I think it was Fallout 3.
Okay.
There was a quest in Fallout 3. For those who are familiar with the game, Vault-Tec, who run all the vaults in the game, run fucked up experiments on all the inhabitants of a vault. In one of the vaults, you actually have to find and basically explore. You climb into one of the vault tube things. I can't remember what they're called. And basically, you are immersed in a pre-war idealized suburban utopia.
Okay.
And you actually, so you have all your weapons and your armor and stuff taken away, and you're in this virtual suburban utopia, and you have to figure out who a murderer or something is in the neighborhood, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But it's kind of a really different thing from going around, doing the normal Fallout game, shooting super mutants and stuff. Is sort of almost a mini, not quite so heavy on a detective thing, but it was there, and it was because. One thing when Fallout's good, what it does really well is a lot of the experiments the Vault-Tec runs in its inhabitants are like you're like, ooh, that's fucked up. This is I can't remember before. This is a long time since I played Fallout 3, but the whole thing is played out in black and white. So again, like it was in a TV show. So again, because it's like that was a virtual world and pretty sure this is a virtual world they're stuck in. That kind of and it was kind of something fucked up going on the whole time. And at the end of it, like soldiers invade the neighborhood and just looking for communists to kill or something like that. So it's a fun little mission, and Fallout 3 fans will know what I'm talking about. But it did remind me again of and in a good way of like, wow, they really it was one of my favorite missions in the game, and they've really sucked that up and really evoked that really nicely. In the One Division. I'm super excited to see where this goes next. I really annoyed the drip feeding it. Damn it.
I know. Damn it. Now, I think that this is also very, very indicative of what we can expect for the rest of Phase 4, because not only is, aside from the Doctor Strange sequel and the Thor sequel, Love and Thunder, it's really a lot of new stuff, like the Legend of Shang-Chi and Eternals. There's the What If stuff, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Hawkeye. And the big tentpoles of that, or the overriding themes of that, is other worlds, other universes. It's multiverse of madness for Doctor Strange, and you've got Sam Raimi coming in to do that, which I think is potentially a match made in heaven. The fact that one of their shows is What If, partnering up with the fact that the first product they're launching Phase 4 with is Wanda and Vision, and Wanda can literally change reality. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how all of that kind of reflects through.
And this is apparently linked to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah. So I think that if people, if big time MCU fans are not liking this or don't like the rest of this show by the end of the run and the story has told, I think they might be a little worried about just the tonal shift for Phase 4. They might kind of go, no, it's gone too dark, or something like that, or it's gone a bit weird. I don't like it. Bring back the classics. I'm curious though.
Make a fair point. I mean, like they've lost Downey Jr. Apparently, Chris Evans might be coming back to do something else. Was in the news this week, but I think it was a really positive choice to end it where they did. It's a good finish for him. No need to revisit his story. I don't like the idea of a Falcon and Winter Soldier, because Falcon's like the least interesting character except Captain Marvel in the whole thing. So like maybe they can think up an interesting story to do with him, but either way, I think they made a good call, Chris Evans. But you're right. There's this is a passing of a torch a little bit to the next sort of. Sorry, wrong button. This is a passing of a torch onto the next the next sort of phase or generation of characters. And I think the kind of money the MCU's made for Disney has bought them a lot of freedom.
Their run of success is literally unparalleled. There is
Yeah, basically
nothing.
it's underwriting them right now because Star Wars hasn't done so well. The parks are closed.
Mm-hmm.
So Disney, I mean, and it's interesting. I mean, are Disney going to blink now? I mean,
Yeah.
are they going to? I mean, are they going to be tempted to sort of go pull the leash a little bit? Hopefully, they're smart because they haven't pulled the leash on
Mm.
Kevin Feige and co just yet, and it's worked out very well for them because of as it is. I mean, and you look at the DC's doing now; it's a fucking mess. I mean, Batwoman premiered this week, and apparently it's awful. So they're completely shitting on their brand on the CW with all their CW superhero shows. They're letting Zack Snyder make. I'm curious to see what it looks like with Justice League film, which the Snyder Cut, which is apparently a 4-hour movie now.
I think that people are reading way too much into that response. I think that it is going to be a 4-part mini-series that is going to be released in 4 parts, but you can just watch from it's going to be just dumped all 4 parts in one go. There's not going to be waiting a week or anything like that. You're just going to be able to watch through the whole thing, but it is going to be 4 parts. I think that's my opinion.
It'd be a big ass to sit down and watch the 4. I haven't even watched The Irishman yet because that's that long.
Yeah.
And we saw what Wonder Woman was. We didn't like that. Apparently, there are 3 different Batman coming out this year in different films in the next year or two. Mm-hmm. So when you look at this, the order and the Marvel have put in the hard yards, and now they're allowed to experiment. And if you're right, if they bring us in, I really hope Marvel fans stick with it. I was stunned to hear people say we're bored with it. I mean, like, are you unfamiliar with character development? I mean, like, there's cool, freaky shit going on. What is wrong with you people?
That's the thing. It is very much. This is a complete. This is David Lynch taking over an MCU property, and sort of like, yeah, I know you expect all that, and some of that stuff will come, or I'm going to use some of that stuff for comedy value, just like their really funny pseudo drunk Vision magic show. It's not used for that pop wow adrenaline thing. It's used for these tiny little micro things that just help you remember, oh yeah, they've got abilities and stuff like that. This is a very different kind of thing, and it is much more my taste for sure, compared to, I'm way more engaged in this than I have been in any of the recent MCU movies. The big thing that someone online brought up is what happens with Black Widow, because we know that the MCU has, all of them kind of feed into each other in some way, shape, or form. Black Widow has been put on a shelf. They've been sort of like, are they going to keep delaying it because they want to get it out in cinemas, or is this going to be the first big MCU movie to come out on Disney Plus? Can they afford to pause it? What's going to happen with it? It's a very interesting question, because again, this is a character that had a very finite end by the end of Endgame.
The prequel though, right?
Yeah, but are they? Come on, this is the MCU, and it's like, okay, well, Scarlet wants to keep going. Let's see what happens. Does it tie in with Wanda shaping reality? Or
I really, really hope they don't. I mean, her end in Endgame is perfection.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was. I've said it for years. It was a huge mistake by Marvel to wait this long. Huge. I mean, they're going to make money out of it. I mean, they're going to make some money out of this, but they're probably not going to make anything like they would have now 3 or 4 years ago. Like, why they sat on their hands with this character never made sense to me. Like, no one wants to see female superhero films. Well, Wonder Woman put paid to that. And Captain Marvel made money too, despite being awful. So, it's a huge mistake to wait this long, but they have. But you're right. I mean, I guess it really depends on it really does depend on the unspecified virus of unknown origin. It's going to if Biden and co can kick a lot of fire under the vaccine process in the US, and by June, July, they're starting to get numbers of vaccinated people up high enough, and the virus numbers are down. Maybe they reopen cinemas again.
Yeah.
I think their question's got to be going through Disney's head, and this is probably a little off topic, is in a country that's had its ass kicked as hard as the US has had on the virus front, we've done pretty well here. Are people going to go back to the cinema even after things are safer?
That's the thing, everyone, the whole Hollywood was looking at the release of Tenet as the big test bed. How well is that going to do going? Because Chris Nolan had his foot down. I'm going to release it in cinemas, blah, blah, blah. It came out to very, 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 very mixed reviews. But what if it was the next MCU movie? That has got much more general populace draw power than any Chris Nolan movie. Chris Nolan is a very, very well-known director. He makes very, very successful movies, but nothing is quite on par with an MCU movie. And, if they come out April, May, just before the sort of like peak summertime in the US, and they go, okay, we're releasing it here. We've had 3 months, we've been able to get vaccines out and things are starting to get under control. The first big movie you're going to be able to watch only in cinemas because Warner Brothers is putting it all on HBO Max. It's a fucking MCU movie. Welcome back, cinema. People would jump at that.
Yeah, MCU movie or your life?
I don't know. People are dumb.
I don't know. I mean, I watched a video today that on the state of the film industry, and that argued that they lost a lot of money on Mulan. That could have been because they chose that premium pricing model, which I don't know we're going to see that again.
Yeah.
So that might have just been the test for them. It'll be wait and see. Same with James Bond, right? I mean, that's still sitting on the shelf. It's been sitting on the shelf for about a year now.
Yeah.
So I'm not confident we will see Black Widow released in the cinemas. I suspect there's a very, very good chance it will land on Disney Plus. If by the summer the US pandemic of the unspecified virus of unknown origin is not under control, or starting to get under control, I think they might have to just, they cut their losses and chuck it on Disney Plus. I mean, it's going to help their subscriber numbers. I heard the rumor is they could be getting something like 250 million subscribers by the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we both raved about Pixar's Soul, and that went straight to Disney Plus. There was no pay bracket like there was Mulan. Infinitely more successful for them in every conceivable way. Reviews, customer feedback, as well as just the general feel and vibe of its release. So I think we're going to see that. I think that's what's going to realistically be what's next. Is the next big release on Disney Plus will be Black Widow. And, just looking at WandaVision's release schedule, the episode 9 of 9 is supposed to release March 12th. So that's just on the cusp of the start of like the late spring, early summer period in the US. They may try and squeeze it out right at that point if there's potential tie-in and if things are safe. Otherwise, it's going to come out on Disney Plus.
It's the broader question about cinemas remains. Not only are there no cinemas to open, and there aren't making many films for cinemas. I went to the cinema the other night, actually, the drive-in, I should say, and I saw Logan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not a bad thing in a way. I'm kind of enjoying being able to go and see these really great old movies at the movies again, but I don't imagine studios and the cinemas are terribly happy about it. That is WandaVision. I think that's 2 thumbs up from us, and I think that's give it a go and stick out the 2 episodes. I think you'll be rewarded.
And this is definitely, so far the first 2 episodes each have been under the 40-minute mark. They're bite-sized, they're entertaining, the actors are very clearly enjoying the roles that they're playing. The story is developing nicely. It's nice to see a lot of kind of just all of the bits and pieces. So if you are a fan, you are going to kind of go, I know what that means. And each episode so far has left with a cool little cliffhanger of a teaser for potentially what's coming next. But go in with an open mind.
And expect something different. Do not expect your run-of-the-mill
Mm-hmm.
action. You don't expect something like Arrow or The Flash from the
Mm-hmm.
CW.
Absolutely.
These guys are actually creative, and they're doing creative things, and they're not making superheroes for fucking teenagers.
No, they are not. Now,
Take
do you want
some
to
brains
do you
matter.
want to talk about your next thing?
Sure. Death of 2020 is a Netflix TV special.
Mm-hmm.
What attracted this is not the kind of thing I would normally have clicked on.
Mm-hmm.
What got me to take a look at this was some strong recommendations from people I know who said it was absolutely hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact it's written by one of my, I wouldn't say one of my favorites, someone who I'm a fan of is Charlie Brooker.
Mm-hmm.
Someone you're not a fan of. And of course, for those who don't know, Charlie Brooker is the writer and creator of Black Mirror, Dead Set, that sort of thing, which
Mm-hmm.
God knows we need more Black Mirror in the world right now.
We're living it. Shut up.
Take a look back at the mad glory of the year 2020 in his comedic retrospective. So he used to do a show in Britain called Newswipe, I think, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mistaken. He used to do like a yearly wrap up, I think, at the end of a Newswipe
Mm-hmm.
of the year kind of thing. And in a classic sort of British style, it was a satirical look at the news of a year with a very sort of deadpan Charlie Brooker hosting. It reminded me of Clive James. Do you know who Clive James is? He was based in Britain for years and years and years, but he was an Australian broadcaster and comedian. He used to do this kind of thing that Charlie Brooker's doing, but he used to do it like 35 years ago. He's unfortunately passed away fairly recently, but similar type of thing. Anyway, so this one though is a bit different to his normal Newswipe kind of thing. He's got Netflix money now, so
Yeah, yes.
he cast here is actually a little different. So this is a little different, other than sort of saying, whereas Charlie might be a little bit more like something like John Oliver or the Weekly, I think it's called here in Australia, hosted by someone on the ABC whose name escapes me right now. And they'll have like a news story on, and they'll make sort of jokes about the news story that they've just talked about. This one is more of we have actors playing characters, and they are playing back the crazy shit that happened last year. So we have Samuel Jackson, Hugh Grant, Lisa Kudrow, Kamal Nanjiani, Tracy Ullman, Leslie Jones, Kristen Milotti, Lawrence Fishburne, these sorts of people. And they are playing characters. So, for example, Lisa Kudrow plays Janetta Grace Susan, who is sort of a what's her name? Sort of a Trump, those blonde advisors who works for Trump. But what's her name? The alternative facts woman,
Kellyanne Conway.
That's her. Yeah. So very similar to that. To constantly contradicting herself and sort of just being a completely horrible human being. Kristen Milioti, who we enjoyed recently in Palm Springs, plays Kathy Flowers, who is sort of a suburban soccer mom who just also happens to be a white supremacist Nazi. She's actually, I think, the best thing on the show. Hugh Grant plays a British historian called Tennyson Foss. He's actually very good. He does comedy very, very well, but like people forget he used to be, pretty good before he got super famous and started picking up hookers in cars and stuff like that. So is it good though, I guess is the question you're after. And and the people who told me it was absolutely laugh out loud hilarious, I'm afraid I have to disagree with that. It's okay. It's pretty pedestrian, unfortunately. Like, I'm not saying it's awful. It was watchable. It comes, it goes. It's there for 70 minutes and it's gone. It's fine. None of the actors are particularly memorable. Other than, like I said, Lisa Kudrow and Kristen Milioti were sort of like, yeah, see what you're doing there. There's a Joe Keery. He's got a very familiar face. Oh, he's in Stranger Things. That's why.
Yeah.
He plays an influencer and YouTuber. He has some good lines. But it really depends sort of skit to skit or scene to scene. So, you'll have Hugh Grant doing a bit, and that works. And then you might have Samuel L. Jackson, Leslie Jones doing another bit. That doesn't work. Then we cut back to somebody else, and it does work. It's really up and down and uneven as a result. I mean, it's rapid fire jokes. They're constantly throwing sort of gags and bits at the telly, and you're like, yeah, okay. I'm just not really feeling it. So I should note, though, I posted on my Facebook page how much I enjoyed WandaVision yesterday, and someone said, "Oh my God, you actually like something." So that should be noted when you're keeping in mind my thoughts on Death to 20. I am a grumpy, cynical curmudgeon who doesn't like anything. And I'm a little bit harder on comedy than other things, apparently. So, look, yeah, if you like Charlie Brooker's style of comedy, give it a go. If one of your favorite actors is in it, give it a go. There are people out there who apparently found this drop down, fall down hilarious. I didn't think so.
Okay.
It's okay. If you really want to revisit 2020, that's the question.
Yeah. All right. And that was on Netflix, wasn't it?
That is a Netflix exclusive, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, last week I said that I was going to get around to watching The History of Swearing with Nicolas Cage. That didn't happen. Instead, season 3 of Disenchantment dropped on Netflix. And this is by the same... This is Matt Groening, who did, obviously, The Simpsons and Futurama. I believe that it's also co-created by a bunch of the other guys, like... his name is... David X. Cohen, that's the name that I was trying to think of. And it's a weird show in every sense of the descriptor. Princess Tia Bean is annoyed at her imminent arranged marriage to Prince Merkimer. Then she meets Lucy, a demon, and Elfo, an elf, and things get rather exciting and dangerous. Do they, though? That is the big question. And where The Simpsons was... it started off as kind of a mirrored slice of life kind of thing, and it evolved into its own thing over time. And Futurama had some kind of surface cynicism that very quickly gave way to these lovely, soft, gooey, warm centers of all of the characters, and you can't help but fall in love with them. Disenchantment really shows you a bleak world. And bleak characters making consistently wrong choices and kind of knowing that they're the wrong choice, but doing them anyway. There's not much saving grace to them. And the first season, I kind of jumped into it thinking, oh, yes, give me more of that Bender's Game Futurama style Dungeons and Dragons mixed with the comedy of Futurama. Perfect, please. Yes, that ain't this. This is definitely taking a lot more interesting social cues, as well as trying to be bizarrely more political in a lot of ways, but also being very, very sardonic and kind of showing its depression on its sleeve. I watch it because the animation is great and there are some funny elements to it that do keep me hooked, but 30-minute episodes, there are 10 episodes in each season, and it gets tiring. Yeah, kind of have to push through because overall there's generally an overarching story to each season, and then it continues on. It's like one ongoing saga. But it doesn't really have too much brevity. Like, a lot of what happens in season 3 is really dark, and some of the shit that happens to the character King Zog, who's Tia Beanie's father, he's dealing with having been shot, tortured, buried alive, and the kind of effects of how that happens. And it tries to bring some comedy out of that, but it shows it and every response and reaction in much more genuine, serious manner that the comedy kind of falls flat and sour. I don't know. Weird. It's a weird target that they're shooting for with this, but 3 seasons in and they are still nailing what they want to nail, and I don't get it.
Well, I mean, my first thought is that if you look at Matt Groening's filmography, he's basically done The Simpsons, Futurama, and this. That's all he's ever done. And The Simpsons, the interesting thing about The Simpsons is it's such an iconic TV show and so influential, even on me. I mentioned earlier, I used to say The Simpsons was a language in of itself. But when I stop and think about it, it's probably been shithouse now for longer than it was ever good. For probably twice as long as it was ever good. I would say the first 10 to 11 seasons were very good, outstanding to good. The first one, maybe aside. And that's how many seasons we are to? We're about 30 seasons now.
Just about looking. They're on 699 episodes.
It's a lot. So I would hazard a guess it's probably the last 20 seasons or so have been poor to downright bad. And so for a show that's been around for 30 years, it stopped being good 20 years ago. So I often think that an artist, a musician, an actor, a director, probably more in the musician director sort of world, has only so many masterpieces in them. We quite often we look at John Carpenter and that run he had through the 80s. The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China, Starman, all those films. And you're like, that's some kind of run. And then he hits the 90s and we got like Ghosts of Mars and whatever that last. He basically gave up making films after one more after that. Like, he only has so many great pieces of art in them. And Matt Groening made some of the most outstanding art, television-wise, that I think will ever exist. But he stopped doing that 20 years ago. So I just look at it and go, I tried a couple episodes of Disenchantment in the first season and I didn't like it. I feel like he's maybe, for someone who's probably a squillionaire now, because how much does he get paid to make The Simpsons? I assume he owns a piece of the IP.
Oh, yeah.
So he's got to be worth a squillion. I just don't know how much great work he's got left in him. And I don't think, and this just felt like Futurama light. And like, it's like he's going, well, I don't want to do that again. And he's sort of going, all the good shit that made that amazing and made The Simpsons amazing in those first few years. I don't want to do any of that. I'm going to do something different. And it sucks.
Yeah. I remember there was a documentary years ago about it must have been just after the release of the first or second season of Futurama, I think. And David X. Cohen and Matt Groening were talking, saying, yeah, we've got this idea for a show that satirizes American football. I was like, okay. I could see a lot of comedy in that because there's people who are really fanatical about it. You could have a lot of in-jokes. There's a lot to source from that. I get that. And Disenchantment coming, and it's like, oh, it's from the same guys. Cool. This is ticking quite a few boxes potentially for me. But yeah, it's like they've either they don't fully understand the source material that they're parodying in true fantasy and D&D, which seems weird considering how good they got it in Bender's game. And the fact that there are so many references to Gary Gygax throughout the whole thing. The creative team they really know their D&D. So to kind of bring in that kind of world to this and it not quite fit, it's like, okay, something has shifted and changed, and it's really sad to see.
It's look, great artists quite regularly make things that are flops. And look, I mean, apparently it's just us. Apparently you and me. It says it's 7.2.
Yeah.
on IMDb. So apparently people like it.
Yeah.
It
Well,
didn't.
you're the curmudgeon and I'm the contrarian, so there we go.
There we go. She get nameplates.
There's another T-shirt for us.
Get the jackets made up with it in the back. So people who know who we are when we inevitably turn up to cons and people
Of
go,
course.
"Who are you and why are you here?" It's a disappointing one because I know when I was excited when I saw Matt Groening's name on it, and you're like, and you see the art style, which is so similar to ones we know, and you're like, oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. I mean, the Twilight Zone of the new Star Trek series or the new Doctor Who. I heard people don't like that one.
Yeah. So I was somewhat disenchanted by Disenchanted.
I see what you did there.
I'm a wordsman. Yeah, but that has really been all that I'm going to bother talking about this week. That's it. I feel,
What do you have to say about that?
Been an hour and a half of us talking. I think it's a fairly good spot for us to end the show.
People have earned the break. I was going to talk about Agents of Chaos, the Alex Gibney series, the documentary series about Russia.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not going to. I'll hold that
the game on Xbox, I think.
No, I'll hold that one over because we talked about Alex Gibney last week, and I mean, it's almost been politics free this week, so people will appreciate that.
Unbelievable. People expect the same shit from us week in, week out.
What are we going to do? And there's like someone in, the most powerful man in the world isn't a fucking idiot. And you go, oh, well, you look at what Stephen Colbert and all those guys do. It's pretty much wall to wall Trump.
Yeah.
Like all those guys. And you're like, what are they going to do now? Like, you're going to be like, oh, Joe Biden had the Japanese ambassador in the White House today, and they discussed trade.
Yeah.
And it'd be thoroughly sensible.
And he didn't once say it's going to be huge.
He didn't release any classified information. He didn't he didn't shot or anything like that. And he didn't try and fondle his daughter.
He didn't blame Hillary. He didn't blame Antifa.
It's gonna be like completely normal and boring. And you're like, what do they get? I feel sorry for Tonight Show hosts. They're gonna have a hard time.
They're gonna have to start working again.
They're gonna start reading the paper past the first couple pages. It's gonna be something else interesting happening in the world.
They're going to be the conspiracy theorist peddlers.
They might need to get to that point if we're going to keep it interesting. But I'm very much looking forward to John Oliver's return next month because I think John Oliver's show is the best of those.
He is very good at what he does.
I'm a big fan. But anyway, it's February 14th for those who are playing at home. There's also some other occasion, which I'm not really familiar with.
Some paganistic satanic ritual.
Love Day, that's right.
Yes. How to take money out of your wallet and make you think you're doing something good.
Yeah, at least. Anyway, we don't engage in that kind of thing unless you're buying your loved one an armchair producer's shirt, in which case she's sure to be very pleased with that.
So thanks. I needed a new rag to work in when I was under the car.
It's the hot new gift. It's the hot new look of a autumn or summer. It's still summer. Yes. Okay. We're rabbiting on now. So thank you for watching, everyone who's watched and all the bots.
As a rundown, this was we talked about Eastern Promises. Travis chose The 13th Floor to be next week's chain movie. We talked about WandaVision, both of us really enjoying it, and to hell with anyone else. Travis reviewed Charlie Brooker's Death to 2020, and I talked about Season 3 of Disenchantment. Next week is going to be an interesting one, I'm sure. We'll have some new things to talk about. Oh, I will talk about Mandalorian because I smashed through Season 1 and 2.
Oh, well, something to look forward to. I'm very, very interested to hear your opinion.
Heads up, I have opinions.
There you go. That's what you tune into this for. That's the level of genius of your opinions. You don't get them anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. I have opinions, not necessarily well thought out ones or consecutive ones that make any sense, but I have thoughts and I will voice them.
If you don't like them, we have others.
What would you like to hear and we'll say it?
That seems to be how you make money online these days.
Absolutely. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for following along. We do appreciate it. If you could go over to twitch.tv/The Fried Brain, give us a follow. If you want to throw money, cool. But otherwise, why would you? We're in a weird environment. Save your money for something else. But the follow does help us for sure. Go to YouTube, subscribe, like, and on Facebook. It just helps, get us out to more than
Tell your
7.
friends,
Yeah.
your relatives, people on the street, person who sits next to on the tram.
Tell
Anyone.
plants. Not enough people are telling plants about podcasts.
The plant market's about to explode.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be huge. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much and good night.